My sister, Chloe, secretly livestreamed our family dinner, and in the video, my parents made jokes about my seemingly pointless degree while everyone laughed along. I had been covering their bills for years, even while struggling to make ends meet myself, so I finally decided to cut them off, and now they were furious. My name is Alex, I'm 28 years old, and I've been trying to carve out a life for myself, even if my family doesn't think much of it. It's always been that way, really. Ever since I was a kid, I felt like I didn't quite belong, not in a dramatic, I must be adopted way, but more like I was an outsider in my own home. I grew up in a family that valued practicality above all else. My parents, especially my dad, believed that life had a simple formula: work hard, earn money, and don't waste time on things that don't directly lead to a stable career. My mom was a bit more easygoing on the surface, but deep down, she shared the same rigid mindset. My older sister, Chloe, took after them completely, maybe even more than they realized. Chloe was always the golden child, she did everything right: good grades, sports, and landed a well-paying job straight out of college. She followed the blueprint my parents believed in, and they adored her for it. I, on the other hand, was the disappointment, not because I was reckless or irresponsible, I never got into trouble or made their lives difficult. It was simply because I didn't fit their definition of success. I studied something they considered pointless. It wasn't theater or philosophy or something stereotypically dismissed, I actually chose a field that had real value. But since it wasn't traditional and didn't have a clear, straightforward career path, they saw it as a waste. They never outright stopped me from pursuing it, but they never supported me either. Every conversation was laced with subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, jabs about how I should have picked something more useful. For as long as I can remember, I had to prove myself in ways Chloe never did. She was naturally respected in the family, while I had to earn every ounce of approval. Even when I did something objectively good, it was met with lukewarm, half-hearted responses. I graduated with honors, and no one cared. I landed my first real job in my field, and my dad sighed, saying, "Well, at least you're making something." Meanwhile, Chloe would get showered with praise for the most basic things. It wasn't just about careers, it was everything. At family gatherings, I was the one whose jokes fell flat, whose stories were interrupted, and whose thoughts were dismissed as soon as Chloe or my parents had something more interesting to say. I can't even count how many times I sat at the dinner table completely silent because I knew no one cared what I had to say. Yet, despite all of this, I stayed connected, not because I particularly wanted to, but because I felt like I had to. I still wanted to be a good son, a good brother, and if I'm being completely honest, I still held on to that stupid hope, the hope that maybe one day something would change, that eventually they'd see me as an equal. But things only got worse after college. I started making money, not a lot at first, but enough to get by, enough to be independent, and that's when things took an unexpected turn. My parents, who had spent years acting like I was a disappointment, suddenly started coming to me for help. "Alex, we're struggling, please help us," they would say, but in a casual, almost entitled way. My dad would offhandedly mention bills that needed to be paid, expecting me to pick up the slack. My mom, who had never once seemed to care about my financial situation before, suddenly started hinting that she could use some extra money for things. And Chloe, who made plenty on her own, never seemed to be asked for anything. It was always me, the one with the useless career, the one they had mocked just months before for wasting time. At first, I helped because I felt obligated, they were my family, after all. But it didn't take long to realize the pattern. Every time I gave, they expected more. My dad started treating me like an extension of his income rather than an independent person. My mom would casually drop hints about how it was only fair for me to pitch in more. It wasn't about need, it was about control. I tried setting boundaries. I told them I couldn't always help because I had my own expenses. The response? Guilt trips, lectures about family responsibilities, and subtle, sometimes not so subtle comments about how Chloe was so much more successful and how they wouldn't have to ask her because she had her life together. For years, I put up with it. I let the comments slide, bit my tongue at family gatherings where they treated me like an afterthought, and kept helping over the years, but this was different. This was the moment something inside me finally snapped. I stared at the screen, my breath coming in short, uneven bursts. The laughter rang in my ears, my dad's voice mocking, my mom's casual dismissal, Chloe's smug tone, and the distant sound of forks clinking against plates as the rest of my family chuckled along, enjoying the spectacle. I rewound the video once, twice, maybe I had misheard, maybe I was overreacting. But no, every word was exactly what I thought it was. They weren't joking in the way families sometimes playfully tease each other. This wasn't light-hearted, it wasn't innocent. It was cruel. It was deliberate. And worst of all, it wasn't just one moment in the video. I skipped around, scrubbing through the footage, hoping to find a single moment where anyone, stood up for me. A cousin, an aunt, an uncle, someone to say, "Hey, that's not fair." But all I found was more of the same, more jokes at my expense, more smirking, more laughter. At one point, my mom even made an offhand comment about how it was a good thing I was helping out financially because at least that made me somewhat useful. My dad, in between bites of food, actually said, if she was smart, she'd have studied something worthwhile in the first place. And then Chloe, ever the perfect daughter, leaned back in her chair and muttered, "Yeah, but it's fine, she'll realize eventually she can't play pretend forever." Pretend? I had been working tirelessly to make my career work, struggling through setbacks, pushing through rejections, working long hours to build something of my own, and the whole time, they saw it as nothing more than me playing pretend. Something inside me burned. I had spent years putting up with their constant put-downs, enduring the little comments, the condescending tones, the forced smiles that never quite reached their eyes when I told them about something I was proud of. And through all of it, I had still been the one helping them, paying for things when my dad conveniently forgot his credit card, covering bills when my mom was short this month, transferring money when my dad said things were just a little tight right now. And this was how they saw me. I locked my phone and placed it on the table, my hands shaking. For a long time, I just sat there, thinking, processing. Then slowly, a thought started forming in my mind. I had always been the one to keep the peace, to let things slide, to swallow my pride and do what needed to be done because they were family. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop. I reached for my phone again, unlocking it with a swipe of my thumb. I scrolled through my recent transactions, my fingers tightening around the device as I looked at all the payments I had made in just the last few months: rent money, grocery money, utility bills, little things here and there that weren't a big deal but added up to thousands of dollars over time. Thousands. And not a single word of appreciation, not a single ounce of respect. I exhaled sharply, my mind racing. They expected me to keep playing my role, to keep nodding and smiling and handing over my hard-earned money while they mocked me behind my back. But they were about to learn something. I wasn't playing pretend, and I wasn't their safety net anymore. I took a deep breath, my thumb hovering over my dad's contact. Calling him first made the most sense. He was the one who always asked for money, the one who guilt-tripped me into giving more than I could afford. I knew him well enough to predict how this would go: first faint innocence, then defensiveness, then a full-blown guilt trip about how I was overreacting and taking things too seriously. But this time, I wasn't going to let him manipulate me. I tapped the call button. It rang once, twice, then he picked up. "Alex, what's wrong?" Straight to the point, no hello, no pleasantries, just immediate concern because he never got calls from me unless he needed something or I needed something. And since he hadn't asked for money in the last week, he probably assumed I was calling about a favor. I didn't waste time. I saw the video. There was a pause, a hesitation, a barely perceptible shift in his breathing. Then, in a carefully neutral tone, he asked, "What video?" I clenched my jaw. "The one Chloe posted, the live stream of the family dinner." Silence. Then a little laugh, forced and uneasy. "Oh, that? Come on, Alex, it wasn't a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "So you knew about it?" He exhaled, making fun of me. I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Really? So when Mom called my career embarrassing, that wasn't making fun of me? When Chloe said I was playing pretend, that was what? Support?" He made a dismissive noise. "You're taking it too seriously. It was just dinner conversation. We joke around, you know that. Joke around. That's what they always said. Every cruel comment, every jab, every casual insult was just a joke, just harmless fun." I pressed my fingers against my temple, trying to stay calm. You do realize people could see that, right? Everyone, strangers, my friends, my colleagues. Another pause, then a much more careful, measured response. Did someone say something? There it was. He didn't care that they humiliated me, he only cared if it had consequences. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. It doesn't matter if someone said something, Dad. What matters is that my own family spent an entire meal tearing me down, and you let it happen. He scoffed. Oh please, you act like we sat around plotting ways to ruin your life. No one was thinking that hard, Alex. You're just sensitive. I exhaled through my nose, trying to keep my voice level. I've been helping you for years. I've covered bills, groceries, rent. I've given you money when I barely had enough for myself, and this is what I get in return? Oh, stop, he snapped. We're family. That's what family does. I let that hang in the air for a second, then slowly I asked, what have you done for me, Dad? He went quiet. I pressed on. I mean it. What have you done for me? Because I can list everything I've done for you, but I can't think of a single thing you've done for me. Alex, he said, his voice sharp now, I raised you. I laughed, shaking my head. That's your job as a parent. That's not a favor you get to hold over my head. Silence. Then he sighed, as if I were being exhausting. Look, I don't have time for this. If you're going to sulk, do it on your own time. Just don't bring it up at dinner next week. I let out a breath. I won't. Good, he said, his voice sliding into a tone like he thought he'd won. But he didn't realize what I meant. I wasn't going to bring it up at dinner because there wouldn't be a next week. I was done. But first, I had one more call to make. I pulled up my mom's number and hit dial. The phone barely rang before my mom picked up. Alex, her voice was firm, like she already knew why I was calling and didn't want to waste time pretending otherwise. I could hear the faint sound of a TV in the background, some sports game playing. What do you want? I didn't dance around it. I saw the video. A pause, then in that same flat, unimpressed tone, she said, and? I gritted my teeth. And you sat there in front of the whole family, in front of the internet, and called my career embarrassing. Because it is, she shot back without hesitation. What do you want me to say, Alex? You could have been an engineer, a lawyer, hell, even a damn electrician, something useful. But instead, you're doing whatever it is you do. I inhaled sharply through my nose, trying to stay calm. I run my own business. She made a dismissive sound. Sure, a business, if that's what you want to call it. That was the thing about my mom, she didn't just think I was a failure, she wanted me to be one. She had spent years acting like my work was some childish phase, something I'd grow out of when I came to my senses and got a real job. She ignored every success I had, brushed off every milestone like it was a fluke, a lucky break that wouldn't last. And yet, despite thinking I was so pathetic, she never had a problem taking my money. I tightened my grip on the phone. I've been helping you for years, Mom, paying your bills, covering things when you came up short. You knew that, and you still sat there and mocked me. Don't be dramatic, she scoffed. It was a joke. I felt something snap inside me. No, it wasn't. It was never a joke. None of it. You hate that I made something of myself without your help. You hate that I don't need you, and you really hate that you need me. Her silence told me I'd hit a nerve, so I kept going. I'm done. No more money my life. I wasn't responsible for them, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. But I knew them, this wasn't over. They weren't going to let me go that easily. The next evening, just as the sun dipped behind the skyline, I heard a knock at my door, the kind of knock that makes your stomach tighten because you know something's off. It wasn't a friendly tap or a casual visitor, it was more like an impatient, urgent thud, as if whoever was on the other side had something to prove. I stood still for a moment, staring at the door. I already knew who it was, I didn't even need to check the peephole. I could feel the tension in the air, the anticipation building up like a storm. They weren't going to let this go. I could already picture their faces, the guilt-tripping, the anger. They weren't used to being ignored, especially not by me. I had always been the one to give in, to swallow my frustration and let it slide. But not anymore. I opened the door. There they were, my dad, my mom, and even Chloe, standing in front of my apartment looking like they had just come from a funeral. My mom was frowning, arms crossed, looking like she had just stepped out of some low-budget mob movie. My dad was trying to look casual, but I could see the tightness in his posture, the way his fingers twitched at his side. And Chloe? She was just there, standing in the back, arms crossed too, trying to look tough but clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Alex, my mom started, her voice dripping with false calm. Can we talk? I didn't even try to hide the irritation in my voice. What do you want? Dad stepped forward, his expression softer than my mom's. We came here because we need to clear things up. This has gone too far. I raised an eyebrow. Really? You want to clear things up after that video? After years of pretending like you don't rely on me, that I'm some kind of embarrassment to you? We didn't mean it like that, he said, holding up his hands, his voice all saccharine and sweet. It was just a joke, honey. You're taking this way too seriously. You're overreacting. I clenched my fists at my sides. Overreacting? No, I'm done. For years, I've been paying your bills, making sure you're comfortable, and you're still mocking me, mocking my career, my life. And when I finally stand up for myself, you come knocking at my door like nothing happened. My mom cut in, her voice growing louder now, with a touch of that familiar venom. You're acting like we're the problem here. Maybe you're the one who's got it all wrong. Maybe it's you who needs to grow up and stop being so sensitive about everything. I could feel my heart rate pick up. You really don't get it, do you? For once in my life, I'm not going to let you walk all over me. I've been carrying you, and I'm done. Chloe, who had stayed mostly silent up until now, chimed in, her tone snide and mocking. Oh, come on, Alex. Are you really going to act like you're some kind of hero? You're just trying to play the victim because we're calling you out. My blood boiled. The last few years, I had been the one saving their asses, working myself into the ground while they lived comfortably off my back. And now Chloe, who barely even had a job, was lecturing me. Don't talk to me, Chloe, I snapped, stepping forward, the heat of anger rising in my chest. You don't have the right to say a damn thing. You've been riding on my coattails since the day you turned 18, and now you've got the nerve to act like I'm the one in the wrong. You're all just mad because I'm no longer letting you treat me like a personal ATM. My mom's eyes hardened, the anger finally surfacing. You've crossed a line, Alex. Do you really think you can just walk away from your family like this? You'll regret it. We've always been there for you, and now you think you can just cut us off? I took a step back, my voice getting louder. No, you've never been there for me. You've been there to take, that's it. You've never supported me, not once. Every single thing I've achieved, I've done by myself, and I'm done pretending like I owe you anything for it. You don't get to humiliate me and then act like the victim when I finally stand up for myself. Chloe started to speak again, but my mom held up a hand to silence her. She was glaring at me now, her eyes full of anger and something else I couldn't quite place, something dangerous.